All right, good. All right, good afternoon, everybody. How are you all? Tired after all those carbs at lunchtime? Woo! I had to go drink a can of Coke to stay awake, so I didn't fall asleep up here. But good to get food. It's always challenging, though, to be sitting after lunch. But this is a good one. So this one is good in the fact that I'm not going to throw a whole bunch of information at you and expect you to remember it, memorize it, and all that good stuff. So this is a good one for after lunch so we can let our food digest and try to stay a little bit awake. So what we're going to talk about today is 4 calls that I've been on in my career that just were a little bit weird. Right? I had this conversation at lunch. You can't make this stuff up. Right? The calls we go on, you just can't make it up. And so these are 4 different calls that you just can't make up. And what we did on them, I'm going to go through kind of their vitals and things like that, briefly talk about what we did. What I want you guys to do is put yourself in our shoes. So I want you to picture the scene, picture how you would respond, kind of try to picture what you were seeing, and then how you yourself would treat this patient and do what you do to this patient. I'm not going to give you a black and white answer on protocols and stuff like that because we all have different protocols, right? They're about the same, but we all have a little bit of nuances here and there. So I just want you to think about what you would do. All right, I'm not going to stand up here and tell you I'm the best paramedic on the planet and this is everything we did and this is what we should have done. So my goal for today is for you guys just to listen to it, think through it, and some of the challenges that we went through and just what we saw. So sound like a good plan? All right, so let's get going. I'm going to shut this door real quick. There we go. A little bit noisy right by that door. So, all right, so what we're going to talk about is scene size up. The importance of not getting lazy going on a call. How many times do you go on a call and you're like, I know exactly what's going on, right? I've been to this home 1,000 times. This is our frequent flyer. I know exactly what this is all about. And 9 times out of 10, we probably do. But it's that one time that's going to catch us. We're going to end up behind the 8 ball and we're going to go, oh crap, I should have caught it. I should have thought differently, right? We get those calls in the middle of the night for the 80-year-old with the stomach ache that we've had 100 times, right? And you think it's just a stomach ache, she's just lonely. But sometimes that call is going to catch us and go, oh, it wasn't just a stomach ache, right? So we're going to talk about the importance of just going in every call with an eye open, with your mind open. I don't want you to get to that call and you already have it figured out, right? Even before you touch that patient. We're going to talk about thinking outside the box, how to avoid that tunnel thinking. Again, you go in with the thought that you know exactly what's going to happen. And as I said yesterday, how often is our calls black and white and totally like textbook? Every time. But not every time, right? We're going to talk a little bit about mixing trauma with medical. What's the priority? And is there one? Again, gray area. What do you treat first? What led to the trauma? Did the medical lead to the trauma or did the trauma lead to the medical problems? Kind of a deal, right? And then putting it all together. So this call will live with me till I die. Who here has ever watched the first 48? All right. So we get called in the morning. Now where I work, I'm sure there's a bunch of you there called like the black clouds when you go to work. Like all this shit happens when you're at work, right? All the craziness, all the crazy calls. So I'm one of those people. I don't mind it. It gets tiring sometimes, but you never know what's going to happen when you go to work. So I go to work in the morning. My partner who I was supposed to have called off. So that meant I got my supervisor as my partner, who was another paramedic. Generally, I had an EMT. It was an EMT and a paramedic. He was not happy. He came into work and he was one of those people that was burned out already like 12 years ago, right? He was the guy in the middle of the night when it was his turn to go on a call, he would go, he'd slam the door of his bedroom and then shuffle his feet all the way down the hallway to the ambulance and then slam that door. So now the entire base is awake, right? One of those guys, like that was him. So I walk in and he goes, oh, no, I'm not doing this, Andrea. I said, it's not my fault my partner called off, right? He's like, no, we're not playing this game today. I didn't get enough sleep last night. I'm not doing this. And I'm like, well, until you find a replacement, you're on the ambulance with me, right? So 10 o'clock in the morning, we get this call to this house. Now, let me tell you, this is actually up for sale. So if you ever want a realty investment along Lake Michigan in Michigan City, Indiana, it's all yours. Now, what I want you to remember is this window right here where this arrow is at. There is a window there, okay? So remember that. Picture that house, okay? Now, it's like 10 o'clock in the morning. I just gotten done eating a little bit of breakfast, like cereal or something like that, okay? Dispatch calls us to a 2-story house in the inner city. All they said was, PD wants you on scene. I'm like, it's 10 o'clock in the morning. PD wants us on scene. Can we use some more words, please? Right? So we get on the radio. Rob is losing his ever-loving mind already. It's only 10 o'clock. He's grumbling and swearing all the way to the ambulance. I get in. I drive. I'm like, I'll drive. It's fine. We get to this 2-story house. We are told to pull into the alley. When we get to the back, we see like 10 detectives standing in the back with their little ties and their little notepads and like the first 48, right? They're all standing around, meandering around this yard. I'm like, what in the Sam Hill is going on, right? We pull the ambulance into the alley. I get out and I said, so what do we need? Why are we here, right? What equipment do I need to bring with me? And where am I going? And he's like, you don't need nothing. I'm like, I don't need anything? He's like, no, you don't need anything. I'm like, so why are we here? He's like, just follow me. Oh, yeah. I'm like, so I don't need anything. Now, Rob, who's like 3 times my size, like I can stand behind him and he don't see me. He's in the ambulance and he's sitting there and he's like, just let me know if you need me. You can see how this is going already in my 24 hours. So the detective directs us to the basement, all right? We go in this house, go in the back door, and it's a hoarder house. So you go in the back porch area, and there's stuff stacked up here, right? Now I'm kind of little, and I have to like suck it in to like get through the like little area, right? And now this is back in the day when we had like pen lights, the ones that worked once, right? We needed a new one. So I had my little pen light in my pocket. We go down, he goes, go down the stairs. So the stairs are like rotting, and they're these old ones, and these old, well, you saw the house, okay? You go down, and then you do like a 90, and then you go down again. We get to the bottom of the stairs, and there's no electricity in the basement. No, it's cold, and the guy comes down, and now let's say I come down the stairs like right here, all right? The end of the basement was long and narrow, and it's about where the computer is at. So I come down, and he stands at the bottom, and he just goes, I'm like, oh, now we're playing charades. Okay. I'm like, what? I couldn't see nothing. I'm like, what is over there? And he was like, he's over there. I go, oh, now we have a he. We're getting there, right? Putting the pieces together. I said, he's over there? He goes, yeah, he's over there. I'm like, okay, now where's my partner? Still in the ambulance, not over there. So I get my little pen light and I'm like, and he's standing still there. I'm like, oh, geez. So I go over there. I get close, and there's a big furnace, right? So there's a furnace like thing, like right about here. All I see is feet, okay? Like legs sticking out. I get a little closer with my little pen light, and I see these legs, and they're green, and they're rotting, and they're smelling really, really bad, right? So I just had lunch, or breakfast. I get over there, and I'm like, oh, like the smell was awful, right? Now in our county, we're the ones that declare the person dead, and then we call the coroner, right? So we get a little closer, and I'm like, what is going on? As I get closer, he's wearing boxer shorts, and I thought he had on a shirt the color of like my New Yorker, okay? As I get closer, the shirt runs away. Let me repeat that. The shirt runs away on 4 legs, multiple sets of 4 legs that were like this big. Rats having their breakfast. I'm like, oh, right? Holy cow. I get a little bit closer. I get by his face because now he's wedged. He's wedged between this furnace and a wall, and it's gravel in the basement except for this like cement pad where the furnace is sitting on, and where he just happens to be is like this little cement pad. I get closer, and he's got mucus and yellow gunk coming out of his nose and his mouth, right? And I'm like, how long has this guy been dead? By this furnace, right? How long has he been down here? We just found him. The detective is still there. Now he's laughing at me because I like was like, huh, when like things moved. And I hear,
Oh my God.
so then I do one of these. I don't hear it, I don't see it, I don't want to know, right? I'm like, that was just my imagination. I'm like, oh no, he's breathing. This dead guy's breathing. Rob! I'm like, no. As I get closer, he has 3 holes. He's got 2 here and a sternal like wound all the way down. You can see the bone. He's got intestines coming out of these holes. The rats were eating him. And he's breathing. And he's decomposing. Like his legs were green and wet and gross, right? My partner's still up there. They didn't know. So I'm like, can you please get my partner? I go, I need stuff. And the detective's like, why stuff? I go, he's alive. And the guy's like, no, he's not. I'm like, he's alive. Oh, he is. He's like breathing, barely, but he's breathing. Like, he goes, no, he's not. I said, yes, he is. He's like, well, we've been here for 3 hours. We thought he was dead. We were ready to wrap this up. That's why we called you. So, Rob comes down. He gets down the stairs. I go, did you bring stuff? He goes, what stuff? I go, I think we need lots of stuff. Like, we just need the bag. We need this. I go, I don't know how we're going to get this dude out of here, but he's breathing. He's decomposing. He's smelly. He's cold. And ew, right? So he comes down there, and I'm like, will this patient go on a backboard up those stairs? No, right? So I'm thinking, all right, that's out. Will this patient sit in a stair chair? Parts of them. I'm like, I don't know what we're going to find once we move them, right? I'm like, we need another way out of this basement. So I said, let's call fire, because we're a third city service, so fire, police, and EMS. I said, we're all county owned. I said, get fire here, and we're going to bust out that window, and then we're going to slide him on a backboard and then slide him out that window. He's like, okay. So fire came. As they're doing that, Rob's standing there. I'm like, we need the backboard, and we need to slide him, right? So I'm like, I can do this. I can do this, right? I get down there. His head's like sideways. And I'm like, okay, so what brought him to that position in the first place, right? What got him there? So I'm thinking, what kind of medical stuff? What do we have going on? There's that thing called rhabdomyolysis when you're laying there for a long, long time, and lactic acid and breakdown of muscle. And I'm like, what's going to happen if we move him and things like that? Is he like diabetic? Is he like, was it an overdose? Why brought him there? A stroke, a fall? Like, how in the sand hill did you end up here in this corner, right? So we get the backboard. Rob's still over here. And I straddle the guy, and I like turn his head. I'm like, well, I got to move his head. I can't put a collar on him wedged in here. So I turn his head, and I'm like, okay, he's still breathing. Right? Throw a seat collar on him as we can in there wedged. Then I'm like, all right, so the backboard's here. I'm like, we got to like just slide him. Okay? So I straddle him. I grab like his shoulder and neck-ish area, and then Rob grabs his feet. And I'm just in my head, I'm just like a cartoon. I'm just picturing his body going, whoop! Like, so I go, okay, on 3, let's go. So 1, 2, 3, we slide him. We get him on the backboard. Thankfully, body parts stayed attached. He left a smear on the concrete. He left the back of his head Like I about scalped him on the concrete. So he's got like he's missing like his hair. It's just like abrasion up his skull. He's got this smear because he's been there forever. And then you ever have that thing called break the seal on stuff? You know, like the really smelly people, and you move them for the first time for that week, and you go, oh. We broke the seal when we moved them. And I'm like trying to get them on there. So we get them on the, now, this is what we assessed once we moved them. Sick, not sick. Pretty sick, right? Pretty sick. So we get them on the backboard, we strap them in, we cover them up. We haven't done really anything for this guy yet. Like, we backboarded him. I didn't put any oxygen on him. I didn't do anything like that. I was still in the, this guy's dead, and this is disgusting, and I'm trying to, like, sort this in my head, like, what's going on, right? We get him into the ambulance, then we do our stuff. We get an IV going. Now, thank God we were only, like, 2 blocks from the hospital, okay? So we get his vitals, we get some fluid going, we throw some oxygen on him. He's starting to kind of, like, wake up because, like, we moved him and things like that, and we got oxygen on him. We got him wrapped up in a blanket. His blood sugar was fine. I don't remember what it was, but it wasn't anything to worry about, right? Now, I don't know if it's the same in Oregon as it is in Indiana. Oregon. Like a piano, but an organ? Oregon. Gun. The things I learned. So I don't live in this state that's below Washington, or as my mom says, Washington. I can watch that. I live in Indiana, okay? But do you ever have it when you call the ER, you feel like they're not paying attention whatsoever, right? Like you call them and go, hey, this is Medic 3, we're not with the blah, 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 blah. And then like you feel them just like put the radio down or the phone and walk away. And then they come back and they're like, so what were the lung sounds? I just told you that like, 2 minutes ago. So I call and I go, hey, good morning, St. Anthony's, which was our hospital, kind of like what you guys hear. I said, we are en route with a, and then I'm like, I didn't think this through before I picked up the radio, right? I go, so we're en route with a decomposing but alive guy. And they're like, I go, I think he's maybe like 50 something, 60, can't tell. It's like complete radio silence. And I turned to my partner who's driving, I think I got their attention for the first time ever, right? They get back on there and they're like, Andrea, can you repeat? Because I knew who I was. I'm like, I think we're around with this decomposing but alive guy. His vitals will be there in like a minute. Okay. I'm like, we have an IV, yada, yada, yada. They're like, okay. We pull in the ER, and it's this enclosed bay like a garage. Now, I'm here to tell you, exhaust fans don't work. I think they're just there for like, it's a placebo thing. It's supposed to make us feel better. So I have the exhaust fan going. It's not doing a darn thing. I'm like dying in the back because he smells so bad. I pop the back doors open even before we're like in the garage, right? Now, we pull in. I get out to pull him out, and like the entire staff is in the ER. Like we had janitors, cleaners, the cook, like the CEO. I mean, we had everybody. You would have thought we were bringing in the president of the United States, like this guy, right? So we bring him in. I'm like, wow, so this is how it's actually supposed to be when you bring a person in, right? We bring him in, they do their thing. We go on like another 5 million calls. We come back. Like a couple hours later, I come back, the detective's there. And he goes, hey, you want to see pictures? And I'm like, I was there. I lived this one. Like I saw this one. I can still smell it. Right? My breakfast is long gone. I'm not even, and then he goes, hey, what you guys doing for lunch? And I go, no. Like we see lots of crap, but no. Like I'm still like, so he's like, no, really, you got to see this picture. And I'm like, so I looked at it. And it is amazing what your mind sees on a call and then what you actually like later when you see it in a picture. So I looked at this guy, I'm like, holy cow, that was bad. The pictures were bad. And this is while they're taking pictures of him before we even get called. Like they thought he was dead, right? So what made this one so gross and so bizarre? Well, obviously he was decomposing, but he was alive. There was a lot of things going on with this, right? One, what brought him there in the first place? The other sad part was this dude had been missing for a while. Somebody finally reported him missing because they couldn't get a hold of him. So he had been there for a while. They finally found him in the basement of his own home. Nobody bothered to check down in the basement, right? That saddened me. Like you don't have people in your life, until it's too late for them to, like, they're checking on you, like, and you've been missing for a while, right? He was decomposing, but he was alive. They asked us to call the coroner, right? So communication was pretty horrific with PD and us. Their assessment of this patient, they went in with that tunnel vision of he's dead. We're not even going to assess him, right? We think he's dead. We'll get EMS over here when we're ready to clean up the scene. He was green, cold. It was horrible. Yeah, he was alive, right? And then trying to get him out. So there's just a lot of moving parts and pieces to this call on top of how he looked. So some of the challenges on this call, we looked back on it and I'm like, there's a lot we could have done in the basement, like just basic BLS stuff, right? Start some oxygen on him, things like that. Check his blood sugar, easy stuff while we're waiting on fire to pop the window out, things like that. But we didn't because we were stuck in this like gross thing, right? Like I was still like shocked by what we saw. Once we got him out, then we started doing what we needed. So again, much quicker communication from PD would have been very helpful. We're like, call us the minute you find the body, right? Call us then, not after the fact when you're ready to clear up the scene. So what happened with this guy? So at the ER, his body temperature was 74. I think that's what kept him alive. He kind of had that hypothermic thing going on, like when people are drowning or whatever, they're not dead until they're warm and dead, right? Same thing with him. He was like just keeping himself alive. They cleaned out his wounds. They gave him a bunch of antibiotics. He actually signed out AMA a couple days later. Yeah. Now here's the funny part. A little bit after that, I'd say maybe a month later, in the middle of a frickin' lake effect blizzard, we get called to 511 Washington Street. And I'm like, I know that call. I know that house. I will never forget that house, right? We get there, and the call was for abdominal pain. We get up there, he's sitting on the porch smoking a cigarette. And I looked at him and I go, so you have abdominal pain? And he didn't look obviously he looked way different than what I remember, right? And he's like, yeah, no, can you lift your shirt up for me? Scars, open wounds yet, the whole thing. I'm like, yep, same dude, right? And I go, hey, do you remember how that plywood ended up in your window down there? And he's like, no, I don't have a clue. What happened? Like, obviously no memory of it. I'm like, and I'm not going to get into it, right? Now here's the other sad thing. A while later, I was working at one of our other bases further south, and my partner calls me, and she's up there because I was covering for somebody else. And she goes, hey, we went to 511. Did you hear that? I go, yeah, you went to 511 Washington Street. She's like, so we found the guy again. And I said, oh boy, where? She goes, in the basement. I said, well, please tell me it wasn't like the last time. And she goes, no, he's dead this time. He had been missing for 3 months. Nobody bothered to check on him for 3 months, right? How sad is that? Just like humanity-wise, like you don't have anybody to check on you for 3 months, right? She goes, so we took him out in a body bag this time. So the poor guy, right? Come to find out, he was one of our frequent flyers. Once we looked him up, we just didn't recognize him at that time. He was into a lot of pain meds and things like that, and he would get altered from taking too many. And we think he just kind of somehow meandered down into the basement in his boxers, and it was warm by the furnace, and he just kind of ended up that way. That's the best we could think of is how he ended up down there. But again, we don't know what brought him there. How did he fall? How did he end up wedged next to the furnace? Things like that. But there was a lot of things to look at with him. A lot of medical stuff, a lot of traumatic, like trauma. Did he have any head injury, neck injury, things like that? A lot of stuff we just couldn't even rule out, right? So that was a very, very interesting one. And I hope you never have to see a decomposing but alive guy. Anyone ever have this? Yes. Well, where I live, it's very, like urban, and you'll pull up and there's like 15 cars in the driveway, and you can't even get to the house, and you're like, and one of you couldn't drive them? Yeah. Well, he's gonna get into the ER quicker. I'm like, no, because he's going to triage. How this works. All right. Oh, we talked about this one yesterday. Were you all here yesterday for this one? All right. So we're gonna skip through that one a little bit because we talked about it yesterday really, really quick. So this guy obviously was a lot of work. Bark in his mouth, all that stuff. Thought I had picked a different one. All right, so here's what his vitals. We didn't go over that yesterday. This was his vitals initially, right? Pulse of 130. Now, if you remember, he was postictal, tachycardic, blood sugar was low, right? And this was his vitals, and we ended up bringing him in and stuff like that. So that one, I always stress, it was the way that the crew behaved was what I came back up with that one. On top of the trauma and the medical and things like that. Like, one, having to work through this call, trying to figure out what to fix first, and then dealing with the interactions with the crew and all that stuff. So my big point for this one is think about how you are treating your crew and your students and the people under you, all right? Especially when it comes to these kind of challenging calls. But for this one, we fixed his blood glucose first. That will give us your better set of baseline vitals, right? Fix what you can and then go from there. What's easy to fix? What can you do with that? And then we managed his injuries after the altered mental status was fixed. Now, had we fixed his blood sugar, had we waited for him to get done with his seizure, and he's still altered, then you start working on that. But he woke up, he started talking. His pulse was still a little high, but when you have a fractured hip and an open tib fib, you're having pain, right? So his vitals were still a little bit high with that. We did give him some pain meds, and that all came down. And by the time we got him to the hospital, he had been given fentanyl, he had been given glucose, we had given him fluids, oxygen, all that stuff, and he actually was pretty stable once we got him there. He ended up having some surgeries and came back home. So I hope that he found a better way to manage his blood sugar than just relying on having a seizure. So, all right. Anyone ever have this one? You ever get those patients, they tell you exactly what ER to go to because you can't go to this one because they know me and I got to go to that one? Like, we have that problem quite often by us. So, yeah. I love the trick of giving them the normal saline and making it sound really fancy. The normal saline. And then you say, this will fix you. And how's your pain? Oh, it's great. Like, you can actually talk them into it. Like, they feel better. So, all right. So this one. What's a picture of that? All right. I'm here to tell you that CPR works. Just compressions work. It does. And they kind of talked about it yesterday. The compressions, doing it right, doing it well, are actually a lot better than just like getting the meds in there and stuff. The basic stuff that we can do works. Now, this one, I was working for a hospital-based system out in Illinois. After I got married, I moved like 2 hours away from where I was working, that I work now, because we moved back that direction. But I went and worked for a place called Riverside Hospital. And we covered 911 in the county. And then we also we did transfers and things like that. And where I was based that day was in Kankakee, Illinois. And we were the mutual aid to Kankakee Fire and Bradley Fire and Bourbonnais Fire, so that if their one ambulance went out, then we got called to cover for them. So I walk into work. I'm there for a 12-hour shift. I have a paramedic with me, which is weird. I'm usually with an EMT. And then I had a paramedic student. Okay, so I had a paramedic student. He comes in and he goes, yes, I get to work with Andrea. We're bound to get something. And I'm like, well, we'll see, right? I said, what do you need to get done? So he gives me his list of stuff. And I said, all right, well, we'll see what we do. So we're in the back of the ambulance. We had cleaned it, and we were going through stuff. and the tones go off. And they're like, Riverside, you need mutual aid to go to Kankakee to this certain road address and for a fall, right? Now, here's my fine artwork. It's not even correct, but it's the best I could do on the computer. This is not the house, but picture this type of porch, okay? So it's kind of a high porch with the steps over here. To this side, there's no house. There's like a break, and then there's apartment complexes right there. But, so picture that kind of scenario, all right? There's a reason I am not an art major. All right, so we get dispatched for a male who fell off the porch is breathing. My student goes, I don't want a refusal. I need this. I go, we don't know what it is. Let's go. Let's see what it is, right? So already the tunnel thinking of it's already just going to be a fall. We're going to get a refusal, yada, yada. So we're on our way there. I said, well, let's think about what could bring this patient to this position, right? He fell off a porch. Did we fall down the steps? Did we flip off the thing? What kind of porch are we even talking about, right? I mean, there's all sorts of variations of porches, okay? So we pull up. It's my paramedic, the student, and myself. We get out, and we see this guy laying prone on the grass next to that tall porch, right? So we walk up, and he grabs the clipboard and the blood pressure cuff out the ambulance, because what were we planning on? Just a lift assist, right? And that's what all you need to grab to get your refusal. And I'm like, I'm going to kind of let this play. It's so hard being a preceptor and like stepping back and like wanting your student to learn and to do your stuff, right? So I'm like, all right, we're just going to see how this works. And I hadn't seen the patient yet. So we get up there. The guy's laying face down, his head's against the wall, right? And he's on a hat. I'm like, this is strange. Any part of that, like a red flag? On his face, against a wall, with a hat, like as a pillow under his head. Now, in my head, I'm thinking, if I fall off a porch, like off that wall, am I going to land that way? No, you're not. And you're not going to look like you're taking a nap face down, like laid nicely on the ground. So we walk up, and my student goes, huh. I don't think he's breathing. So, well, we're going to check a pulse? Nope. I go, so what good's our clipboard going to do right now? And our blood pressure cuff, right? I'm like, what do you want us to do? What do you want us to get going? What would you like us to grab and do? And he was like, we're going to need to do CPR. I said, okay. I said, let's go get, we sent the other paramedic. I said, he'll go grab the bag, he'll grab the monitor, all that stuff. Let's get him rolled over and we'll start CPR. And now the next thing my student did, and I will forever be grateful to him, he said, we need to do cervical immobilization before we roll him over. We need a C-collar. I didn't think about that. I was thinking already in my head, I'm 12 steps down the line with what do I need for meds? We need to shock, CPR, IO, intubate, all that stuff, right? And he's thinking, we need to roll him over, but we need a C-collar. He fell off the porch, right? So, okay. So we held his neck, we rolled him over. I started compressions while the equipment came, right? So we dispatched Kankakee Fire to show up with their fire truck just for some extra hands to get him moving. Now, at the same time, there's a lady on the porch, right? There's his vitals. Dead, not dead. Warm. Do you ever have this? And I find it interesting because it confuses people. We have dead and then we have dead, right? I try to explain this to people who aren't in this career. I'm like, there's dead that's warm that you can possibly revive, and then there's dead that you just don't, right? Okay, so you're on the same page with dead. He's dead. We're not dead quite yet, right? Because he's warm in the whole 9 yards. So we are doing CPR. There's this lady on the porch. She's raising her arms and she's screaming, blood of Jesus, like yelling. At the same time, we are in a very drug-heavy neighborhood. So in my head, I'm thinking this was like a drug overdose or something happened suspiciously like that, right? Something gone bad. This guy's in his 60s. So this lady's screaming, blood of Jesus, and I'm asking her, do you know anything about this patient? Well, he's my husband. I said, what kind of stuff, medical history? I don't know. I think he's diabetic. Okay. Now, Kiki Fire shows up. I'm doing compressions while I'm yelling at her, right? My student is putting him on the monitor. We get asystole. So are we going to shock or not shock? Not shock, right? So we're still just doing compressions, right? My student's bagging them. Kiki Fire comes. We get him on the backboard. We get him into the ambulance. Meanwhile, the wife does the Walmart bag drop, like the mic drop, hands me this whole bag of meds. It's a pile, right? We're still doing CPR. We get him into the ambulance. Now, I want you to picture the back of an ambulance. The fire truck shows up with 3 paramedics. Then there's me, then there's my student, and then there's my paramedic partner. We're all in the back of the ambulance. I'm by the monitor in the little seat here. I'm still doing compressions. My student's in the airway seat, ready to throw that tube in, and he is pumped, okay? On the bench seat, I have the Kankakee Fire guy getting ready to do an IO here in his arm. Then we got someone down here grabbing the meds. I'm doing CPR. All of a sudden, the dude opens his eyes. And I'm like, I go, well, hello. My student goes, oh, I needed that one. The paramedic still didn't, he was getting ready to do the IO. I mean, this was like simultaneous magic going on, right? Even with a bunch of paramedics in there. He's ready to do the IO, and he's like, huh, right? We stop. I look at the monitor, beautiful sinus rhythm, right? The guy's awake. He's talking. I go, how you feeling? Like, what's going on? Like, we had checked his blood sugar. It was all fine. I mean, there wasn't anything really significant initially that we could figure out that caused this, right? He's like, my chest kind of hurts. I said, good. I was doing compressions well, right? Now, I'm here to tell you, we did no meds. We got oxygen on him, but we hadn't intubated him. All we had done was compressions. That is it. Now, we get back to the station. I got called magic hands for the next like 4 months. You know how well that'll go over, right? So we get them. I call into the hospital. We tell them what's going on. They didn't believe us. I had the strip to show them what was going on, right? So what was suspicious about this call and crazy? Well, one, the suspicious positioning on the ground, right? That was a red flag initially. We came in kind of thinking it was just going to be a lift assist. I came in after that with it's probably a drug overdose because this is the neighborhood we're in. This is what's going on. He's unresponsive. My student was smart enough to think about putting the C-collar on him when we rolled him over. There was a lot of tunnel vision thinking going on in different tunnels. But we were all aware of the positioning was very not normal for what we had been told about. The patient's medical history was diabetic. Only per the wife, that's all we had gotten from her. The patient was pulseless and not breathing. We did CPR, and he woke up and told us what ER he wanted to go to. Now, we get to the ER, we drop him off. About an hour later, I get a call from the police department, and they're like, hey, we need some information about this call, because they had not even shown up at the scene. They're like, we need to know the patient positioning, all this stuff, what you saw, all the details like that. So right there was a good reminder to me of being very aware of your surroundings when you go on a call, even when it seems to be benign like a lift assist, right? Because now all of a sudden, everything that happened on that call, we have to document, we have to remember what was going on, all right? The guy ended up having a C6, C7 fracture, okay? I'm like, all right, so he did legitimately fall off the porch, right? He wasn't out in the yard and like passed out or anything like that. Now, there's a few things that made this a little bit interesting as well for this guy. Nobody seemed to have an idea what was going on. There was people on scene that suddenly magically left. That's selective amnesia, right? You ever have that? Nobody knows anything. Nobody knows the guy. I don't know anything, and they walk out. We had to try to think about the H's and T's. You remember those, right? H's and T's. What could cause this person to go into asystole? Are there any of them? Are we able to reverse any of it and see what we could figure out? We were running into a dead end on most of them, right? Everything was looking okay. We had a paramedic student as part of the crew, the unsafe neighborhood. We had the lady yelling blood of Jesus the entire time. And I even said to her, I'm like, I'm a Christian, that's great, I get it, but right now we're busy, right? We got a lot going on. Sure shooting, the guy wakes up, right? We, being the veteran crew, I took full responsibility for not thinking about needing a C color, right? My student did that. Reminded me again of the importance of any call we go on, starting with your basic level stuff, right? Your ABCs, basic stuff. Don't jump to all the ALS stuff. Don't jump to all that stuff right away. And then tunnel thinking, I thought it was an OD, being where we were and all of that stuff. Well, so this is what happened to this guy. He had a C6, C7 fracture. His potassium was off, okay? Now, looking at this potassium, that can throw you into asystole if it's off kilter, okay? The electrolytes are off. I asked the police, they called back after they got a report. I said, can you give me a little information on what happened on this call actually? He said, here's what happened. The wife, the husband, and a drug dealer all went to a bar. They were in the living room. It was drug related. They got into this huge argument about something. The drug dealer shoved this dude against a wall really, really hard. He was already sick. His potassium was already off whack. He gets shoved into a wall. That jolt created him to go into asystole. Okay? Now you can't make this stuff up. This guy then falls down because he got thrown into asystole, whether it be a combination of the potassium plus the commotio cordis we heard about yesterday from Chris, right? It could be that possibility. He collapses. They all go, oh no, what are we going to do? So we're going to make it look like an accident. They take him outside. Then they chuck him over the porch. They don't just carry him down there and lay him down. No, he falls off the porch. He breaks his neck. The wife admits to feeling guilty and puts a hat under his head like a pillow. She thought that was the best I could do. I felt bad for him. Well, you killed the guy. But let's make sure his head's comfortable while he's dead. Okay? You can't make this stuff up. That's how he ended up in asystole. So doing compressions and all that amazingly brought him back. So that's what was weird about this call, right? And then he had a whole bunch of other things off. He was very, very sick. They flew him to a trauma center for his neck fractures and things like that. So what did I walk away with on this call? A lot of stuff, right? One, walking in with an open mind, looking at your scene, taking close account of what's going on, how your patient's positioned, right? Then going back to the basics, all the basics that we've learned from day one in EMT school, right? Doing good compressions, right? Doing CPR the right way, doing it the way you're supposed to, making it good quality CPR. Not going in with the tunnel thinking. We had multiple tunnels going on, like I said. We all thought something different. We were all thinking it was going to be a lift assist. And then I thought it was an OD, and it wasn't that, and it was this, and the whole 9 yards. So that's what made this one kind of an interesting call for all of us. We learned a lot from this call, going back and talking about it. How often do you go back and talk about each call with your partner? Do you do it all the time or occasionally if it's a crazy call? I can't stress enough trying to go in with each call with an open mind. No matter how many times you've been to this person's house, right? Go in with an open mind. Go in with that motivation to learn something after that call, even if it's just a minor something. All right? Go in with that call. Come back. Talk about it with your partner. Even if that call went amazing and it was awesome, talk about it. Hey, thank you so much for being quick on getting them on the monitor. Thank you so much for just grabbing whatever and I didn't have to ask for it. Thank you so much for being a good teammate. Or, hey, you know what? Let's talk about it. What did we do wrong? Right? These calls I've talked about, there was stuff we did wrong. There was stuff we could have done better, right? We could have caused greater harm on this guy if our student hadn't thought to do the cervical collar, right? So there's always things. I always stress to all my students and everywhere I speak, do not become a lazy EMS provider, right? The most dangerous provider we get is a lazy EMT or paramedic. When you walk in thinking you know everything every time, because it will kick you in the butt. I promise you that. All right, so the last one. Anyone ever have that? I get that with the drug overdoses quite a bit, right? They're pissed off you woke them up, right? I had a guy, got to work, our shift starts at 8. By 8:25, I got a call for unresponsive dude in some random front yard in the summertime. I'm like, here we go. This dude had overdosed on heroin in this person's random front yard. We wake him up, bring him to the hospital. I don't even have the sheets back on the cot, and he's walking out the parking lot, right? 3 o'clock in the afternoon, we get called to a known drug house for an unresponsive male in the kitchen. I walk in, same dude. I'm like, I just saw you. You still have the Band-Aid on where I did the IV, right? Overdosed again. Wake him up. He goes, I didn't overdose. I said, the needle was right in your arm, right? Your other arm, because you had the Band-Aid on this side. I said, I put that Band-Aid, like that's from the hospital. And she goes, it wasn't me. I just drank some orange juice. So I said to him, I said to my partner, I said, hey, the next time we talk to our supervisor, tell him that Narcan works on orange juice now. I think we found a really cool thing. 1:23 in the morning, and I remember this, 1:23 in the morning, on the opposite side of town, we get dispatched for an unknown, unresponsive male on a sidewalk. Guess who I find? I'm like, dude, I can fill out your whole patient report without even talking to you by now, right? Woke him up again. He was very angry at me. I said, we got to stop meeting like this. This is 3 times in one shift. Ridiculous. All right, so here's what we get called for a lift assist. All right, Gary, Indiana, I talked about it before. This is what Gary, Indiana looks like. People live in this, okay? It's a very, very dangerous city. We have drugs, we have violence. If we pick up a guy that got shot by a gang issue, the guy's laying in the street, the other gang's standing over there, this gang's standing over here. They're waiting to see if we pick him up. If we pick him up and put him in the ambulance, that means they didn't kill him. They follow us to the ER, and then they try to shoot him at the ER. Our whole wall of the hospital has bullet holes all over it because these stupid idiots drive over there and they think they're going to try to shoot him. We actually have protocols on how we get out of the ambulance and get our patient into the ER. And it's a moving target. Like we weave and we move, and it's a pull, yank, and then move, and then we move, and then we move, and then we turn the corner and we get in. Because a moving target's harder to hit, right? This is how crazy this place is. So we get called. I work for a private ambulance company. I was literally like an hour away from getting done with my shifts, and I was so happy, right? I had an EMT student with me, my EMT partner, who was Daryl that I talked about before this morning. And he was in EMT school at that moment. We get called for a lift assist. Dispatch says, we have this guy that he's got a lift assist. His son states he's in the bathroom. He's in the bathtub. He can't get him out because he has a back problem. He can't lift him out. He just needs help getting him out of the tub. I said, okay. Obviously, we had to go. I didn't have a choice to say no. So we get over there. In my head, I'm thinking, I'm almost done with work. I want to go home. I'm tired, right? My student's like, well, I guess I didn't get nothing out of this call. We just got to quick get him out of the bathtub. And so we go in there, and what it sounded like was legitimate lift assist, right? So I grabbed the clipboard and the blood pressure cuff, and I'm like, let's go. I got things to do. We got to go. Let's just get him up, get him out, and get going. So we walk in. We find a 65-year-old male. It was like one of those homes on that picture. Rotted stairs going up to the front porch. You walk in, there's a light bulb hanging from the ceiling by a chain, right? There's nothing. There's holes in the floor. You have to navigate holes in the floor that you can see the dirt below it. I mean, this is how poor these people live, right? We walk in there. He's in the bathtub. He's supine in the tub naked. Very tall, lanky guy in the tub naked. He's alert to pain. There's mouse turds all over the bathroom, roaches crawling on the edge of the tub. The bathroom is the width of the bathroom is the width of the bathtub, right? So there's the bathtub, very small bathtub, a toilet, a sink, and that's it. Our backboard is like too long for the bathroom. I mean, it's a tiny, tiny, tiny bathroom, okay? We go in there, and I said to my partner, this is not going to be a lift assist, right? And I said to the son, I said, how long has he been here? Well, I didn't get a hold of him yesterday morning. And then I couldn't get a hold of him this morning, so I thought I'd come over and check on him. And this was like in the afternoon, okay? There's feces and urine soaking the patient and covering the bathtub, covering the tub. They last talked to him the previous day, okay? This is what his vitals are. Weird. I'm like, what the heck? We have a pulse that's like 180 to slow. It's irregular. His blood pressure was low. His breathing was off, right? 85%. So I'm thinking, all right, we need to get oxygen on him. But then immediately, what brought him to this position? How is he in the bathtub naked? How long has he been here? Obviously a while, right? How did he get there? Did he fall off the tub, hit his head, whack his head? Does that cause him to go unresponsive? Things like that. What was it? Medical problem that made him pass out, have a syncopal moment? You know, you're trying to think of what you can find that you could possibly reverse or not make worse, right? So what was bizarre about this call? Well, here's the other thing. We get him in the tub. So I straddle the tub, like kicking roaches out of the way. I put a seat collar on him. Because I'm like, I can do this. Like, and that call made me remember that, right? So I put the seat collar on him, do a sternal rub. He kind of moans and groans. I send my student out to go get the cot with my partner and things like that. I'm like, we're going to need to get this guy out. We got to get him on a backboard, blah, blah, blah. So we get him. They come in. I'm holding them between me and my partner. We get him sitting up on the edge of the tub, all right? He's sitting there. Now he's wet. He's slippery. He's naked. And he's sitting on the edge of the tub. And he's like this tall. So he's tall. I pivot him. There was no way to get this backboard in the bathroom or get the cot in the bathroom. So I pivot him to the toilet. We get him sitting on the toilet. So now we can stand up. We can get the foot of the cot in there and then sit him down on the cot. You see can you picture that? There's just no room to work. So he's sitting on the toilet and they go get the cot and he immediately has a grand mal seizure. And he's shaking and he's doing this. And I'm trying to hold him on the toilet and he's slipping and sliding all over the place. And I got my legs locked on him. And my partner comes in and goes, I just left you alone for a second. Right? We get him on the cot. We hook him up to the monitor. He's like super tachycardic. He's unresponsive. My partner goes sterile, says, we need to cardiovert him. I'm like, no. He was like in paramedic school. He was super excited. Like he's unresponsive, all this stuff. I'm like, he just had a seizure. Let's let him calm down. Let's get that heart rate back to normal, and then we'll see what we can start assessing, right? So we get him in the back of the ambulance. We get an IV started. I check his blood sugar. It says high. So now it's like, okay, now the pieces are starting to get put together on how this guy ended up in this bathtub, right? So we have a high blood sugar. We get him on the monitor, and I print out the strip. And do you ever, if you print out strips, go like this, and then you like, still don't know what it is, right? It looks funky. It doesn't look normal. He ended up in a 3rd-degree heart block once all of this settled down. 3rd degree. His blood sugar was high. His blood pressure was low. He was super dehydrated, right? He had a lot of stuff going on. We get him to the ER. He sees in the ER. They intubated him in the ER. Look at his blood sugar. 1,500. Do you see how he ended up where he ended up, right? We got dispatched for a lift assist. And this is what we find, right? I was ready to go home. Obviously, I didn't get home on time that night, right? I went in with that tunnel vision again. I went in thinking it was going to be a quick lift assist, and it ended up being this mess going on. I don't know his outcome after that, but in Gary, it's a very, very low income, poverty stricken city. So a lot of these patients that we got don't have the meds, they don't have the resources, so they run out of their medication and all of that stuff. So this guy was just, he was a good guy. He just was very, very poor, didn't have the resources, didn't have the support to keep up his meds. His blood sugar got high. What I think is he probably seized at home, went unresponsive, and that's how he ended up in the bathtub. And then one thing led to another. So that's what made this call very, very interesting. All right. Complex medical issues, trying to figure out what caused what first. What do you treat first? The unclean environment. Yes, we could have managed ABCs better. Always, always, always go and look at your calls. Think on how you can improve on the very next call you go on. All right. I can't stress going to a call as well. When you start rolling for that call, how often do you talk to your partner about what you're going to be seeing? Do you start planning who's going to grab what, who's going to do what? Start thinking ahead on what this call could possibly be. Get that tunnel vision out and open up your mind to what this call could potentially be. Does that make sense? All right, so I learned a lot on all these calls. Again, things I could have done differently, absolutely. Could you have done a better job at it, looking at it and knowing ahead of time? Probably. I'm sure there's things you guys could come up with. 20/20 vision is always amazing, isn't it? Right? When you can go back and look at it. What I want you to walk away with today is go into each call with an open mind, all right? Not an already preconceived idea. Don't take what dispatch says is actually happening, right? We all know that. The other thing I always stress, have plan B in your front pocket, plan C in your back pocket. How often does a call go with plan A, right? The worst feeling in the world for any of us, no matter how long you've been in this career, is when plan A doesn't work and you don't have plan B, right? You ever get that panicky, uh-oh, and now you're feeling like you're behind the 8 ball, right? Now you gotta work twice as hard to get ahead of it. Have that open mind. Start thinking. Get your protocols in your head. Know what you're going for, all right? And then always try to stay one step ahead of what is going on, all right? And the big thing at the bottom, do not become a dangerous EMT. Don't ever become lazy. Always be there learning. Always be there trying to be better, no matter how long you've been in this career. And you're proving it already by being here this weekend. So I hope you guys learned a little bit from it. If anything, hopefully I kept you awake after lunch. So, all right. There we go. Thank you.